The great hall of Ironvale Fortress burned with the light of 1,000 candles, their flames dancing against walls of ancient stone. Elira kept her head bowed as she moved between the gathered nobles, a silver pitcher of wine clutched in her trembling hands. She was invisible here, just another servant girl in a gray dress, beneath the notice of the powerful men and women who had gathered to witness history. Tonight, the war would end. At the far end of the hall, 2 thrones sat upon a raised dais. King Aldrich of Aldoria occupied one, his crown gleaming and his smile fixed and false. The other throne remained empty, waiting for the arrival of the man who had haunted Elira's nightmares since childhood, the Alpha King of the Varketh. "They say he's more beast than man," whispered a noblewoman to her companion as Elira passed, "that he tore out Lord Brennan's throat with his bare teeth at the Battle of Ashenmoor. I heard he keeps human slaves in his mountain fortress, uses them for sport." Elira's grip tightened on the pitcher. She had heard all the stories. The Varketh were monsters, wolf demons who prowled the northern mountains, who could shift between human and beast at will. For 3 generations they had waged war against Aldoria, and the borderlands ran red with blood. But tonight, there would be peace, a treaty, an end to the killing. If only Elira could shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It had started that morning, a cold pressure behind her eyes, a prickling sensation across her skin that she had learned long ago to never ignore. Her mother had called it the knowing, the gift that ran through the women of their bloodline, the gift that had gotten her mother burned as a witch when Elira was 7 years old. "Keep it hidden," her mother had whispered before they dragged her away. "Promise me, Elira. Promise me you'll never let them see." So Elira had hidden it. For 15 years she had buried the knowing so deep that sometimes she almost forgot it existed. But tonight, it screamed inside her skull like a warning bell. The great doors swung open and the hall fell silent. He entered like a storm made flesh. Thalen, Alpha King of the Varketh, stood taller than any man Elira had ever seen, his shoulders broad enough to block the doorway, his presence commanding every eye in the room. He wore black leather and dark fur, no crown upon his head, no jewels at his throat. He needed none. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. His face was harsh, all sharp angles and shadows, but it was his eyes that stole Elira's breath. They were the pale gray of winter ice, cold and ancient and utterly inhuman. When they swept across the hall, Elira felt the weight of that gaze like a physical touch. She looked away quickly, heart pounding. He moved through the parting crowd with predatory grace, his entourage of Varketh warriors flanking him in perfect formation. Each one was massive, scarred, and carried themselves with the coiled tension of barely leashed violence. King Aldrich rose to greet his enemy, and the 2 monarchs clasped forearms in the traditional gesture of peace. Words were exchanged, diplomatic and hollow. A servant brought forth the treaty, its parchment crisp and white. Elira should have been watching history unfold. Instead, her eyes were drawn to a figure in the crowd. Lord Sorin, her kingdom's master of whispers, stood near the dais with his hands clasped behind his back. He was smiling. The knowing shrieked. Elira's vision fractured. For one horrifying instant she saw 2 realities overlaid, the great hall as it was and the great hall as it would be in moments. Blood on white parchment, the Alpha King clutching his chest, a blade buried to the hilt in his heart, the handle wrapped in cloth that bore King Aldrich's seal. The treaty was a trap. Elira didn't think. She couldn't think. Her body moved on pure instinct, the pitcher clattering to the floor as she lunged forward. She shoved past a nobleman, ducked under a guard's arm, and threw herself toward the dais just as Lord Soren's hand emerged from his cloak. The blade flew. Illyra collided with the Alpha King's chest, her slight weight barely shifting his massive frame. But it was enough, just enough, to turn his body a fraction to the left. The blade meant for his heart buried itself in her shoulder instead. Pain exploded through her, white-hot and blinding. She heard screaming, chaos, the clash of steel. But all of it seemed distant, muffled, as if she were sinking underwater. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. She looked up into the face of the Alpha King and saw those winter-gray eyes blazing with something that might have been shock. Why? His voice was deep, rough, and barely human. Illyra opened her mouth to answer, but only blood emerged, hot and copper-sweet. Her blood. His hands. Their blood mingling on his skin. Something ignited. It started in her chest, a searing heat that had nothing to do with the blade in her shoulder. It spread through her veins like wildfire, burning, claiming, and marking her from the inside out. The Alpha King's eyes widened, his pupils dilating until only a thin ring of gray remained. Then gold. His eyes burned molten gold. No, he breathed, staring at her with dawning horror. No, this cannot be. Illyra tried to speak, tried to ask what was happening, but the darkness was already pulling her under. The last thing she saw was his face, beautiful and terrible, twisted with an emotion she couldn't name. The last thing she felt was something ancient awakening inside her, wrapping around her soul like chains. Illyra woke to the smell of pine and wood smoke. For one blissful moment, she didn't remember. She lay with her eyes closed, drifting in the space between sleep and waking, aware only of warmth and softness and the steady crackle of a nearby fire. Then the memories crashed over her like a wave. The blade, the blood, those golden eyes. She had no memory of the journey here, only fragments of darkness and the echo of that burning gaze. Illyra's eyes flew open and she immediately tried to sit up. Iron bit into her wrists, yanking her back down. She gasped, twisting her head to see thick metal cuffs securing her arms to the bedposts above her head. Not just any bed. She lay in the center of an enormous four-poster frame, its dark wood carved with patterns of running wolves. Furs and silk surrounded her, luxurious beyond anything she had ever touched. But the chains turned that luxury into a prison. "You're awake." The voice came from the shadows near the fireplace, deep and resonant and achingly familiar. Illyra's head snapped toward the sound. He sat in a high-backed chair, one leg crossed over the other, watching her with unnerving stillness. In the firelight, the Alpha King looked less like a monster and more like something carved from stone and shadow, beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful. "Where am I?" Her voice emerged as a rasp. "Why am I chained?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rose from the chair and approached the bed with slow, deliberate steps. Each footfall was silent despite his size, and Illyra couldn't help but think of wolves stalking prey. "You are in Drakenmoor," he said, stopping at the foot of the bed. "My stronghold. And you are chained, because I don't yet know if you are my salvation or my destruction. I saved your life." The words came out sharper than she intended. "You intercepted a blade meant for my heart." His jaw tightened. "And in doing so, you have damned us both." Illyra stared at him, uncomprehending. Without warning, he reached down and grasped her left arm, pushing up the sleeve of the thin shift someone had dressed her in. Elira flinched at his touch, not from pain, but from the jolt of heat that shot through her at the contact. Then she saw it. A mark blazed on the inside of her forearm just below the elbow. It was intricate, almost beautiful, interlocking curves and lines that seemed to pulse with faint golden light. As she watched, the glow intensified and warmth spread from the mark through her entire body. "What?" she breathed. "What is that?" The Alpha King released her arm and stepped back. Slowly, he pushed up his own sleeve. An identical mark adorned his forearm. Same pattern, same golden glow. "It is called the Valdris Bond," he said, his voice flat. "The mate mark. Ancient magic. Older than my bloodline. Older than the mountains themselves." His eyes met hers, and she saw fury barely contained beneath the surface. That blade was no ordinary weapon. It was forged to create an unbreakable bond between the one who bleeds and the one who was meant to die. Elira's mind reeled. "The assassin," she whispered. "He meant to bind you to someone else." "To a puppet of your king's choosing, yes." His lip curled in disgust. "Instead, you took the blade, and now the bond has claimed us both." "Then break it," Elira said desperately. "Undo it. I didn't ask for this. You think I want this?" His voice rose, echoing off the stone walls. "You think I want to be shackled to a human woman I don't know? To feel your heartbeat inside my own chest, to sense your emotions bleeding into mine?" Elira's breath caught. She hadn't noticed it until he said it, but now she could feel it too. A second presence humming beneath her ribs, a warmth that didn't belong to her. His warmth. "The Valdris Bond cannot be broken," he continued, his voice dropping to something cold and final. "It can only be completed or denied. And denial means death for us both." Elira felt the color drain from her face. "You should have let the blade find its target." He turned away from her, his shoulders rigid. "It would have been kinder than this." He walked toward the door, and as the distance between them grew, Elira felt something twist painfully in her chest. A wrongness, an ache that intensified with every step he took. "Wait." The word escaped before she could stop it. He paused, one hand on the door frame, but didn't turn. "What happens now?" Elira asked, hating the tremor in her voice. His answer was barely more than a whisper, but it struck her like a blow. "Now you learn what it means to belong to a wolf." 3 days passed in that gilded cage. Elira's chains were removed on the second morning, but her freedom extended only to the boundaries of the Alpha King's chambers. The door was locked from the outside, the windows barred with iron, and a silent Varkith guard stood watch in the corridor at all hours. She was a prisoner in everything but name. The wound on her shoulder healed with unnatural speed. By the 3rd day, only a faint scar remained, pale and smooth against her skin. But the mark on her forearm grew brighter, its golden light now visible even in full daylight. And the bond grew stronger. Elira could sense Thalen now, even when he wasn't in the room. His presence hummed at the edge of her consciousness like a second heartbeat. When he was near, her skin flushed with warmth. When he was far, a hollow ache settled in her chest that made it difficult to breathe. She hated it, hated the way her body responded to him without her consent. Hated the way her dreams filled with images of gray eyes and strong hands and whispered words in a language she didn't understand. He visited her each evening, always after sunset, always keeping careful distance between them. They spoke little. He would ask if she needed anything. She would say no. He would stand by the fireplace, staring into the flames, and she would feel his turmoil bleeding through the bond. Anger, confusion, and beneath it all, something that felt dangerously like longing. On the third night, Elira decided she was done being passive. "Why haven't you killed me?" she asked as he stood in his usual position by the fire. His shoulders stiffened. "What? If the bond can't be broken, and you clearly don't want it, why keep me alive?" Elira pushed herself off the bed, standing on unsteady legs. "I'm a liability, a weakness your enemies could exploit. The logical thing would be to let me die and be free of this." He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes made her step back. "You think I haven't considered it?" His voice was rough, barely controlled. "You think I haven't lain awake every night since you fell into my arms, wondering if it would be kinder to end this now?" He moved toward her, and Elira held her ground despite every instinct screaming at her to retreat. "But I can't." He stopped inches away from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "The bond won't let me. Even the thought of your death causes me physical pain. I am bound to protect you, to provide for you, to—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "To what?" Elira whispered. His eyes dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, and the hunger she saw there made her lungs forget to work. "It doesn't matter," he said hoarsely. "The bond compels many things. I refuse to let it compel that." He turned away abruptly, putting distance between them, and Elira felt the loss like a physical blow. "The assassin," she said, grasping for safer ground. "Lord Sorin, has he been captured?" "He escaped in the chaos." Thalen's voice hardened. "My scouts are hunting him, but he knows these lands. He has allies." "He's the king's master of whispers," Elira said bitterly. "He has allies everywhere." Thalen glanced back at her. "You knew him." "I knew of him. He visited my village once, when I was a child." Old memories stirred, dark and painful. "He was there the day they took my mother." Something flickered across Thalen's face. "Took her?" Elira hadn't meant to say that. The words had slipped out, pulled by the bond's strange intimacy. She turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. "It doesn't matter," she said, echoing his earlier words. Her mother was gone. Her younger sister Neve, barely 3 years old when it happened, didn't even remember her face. Some wounds never healed. Silence stretched between them. Then she heard him move, felt him approach, and when his hand touched her shoulder, the gentleness of it nearly undid her. "You're shivering," he murmured. "I'm fine." "You're lying. I can feel it." Of course he could. Elira closed her eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. This was too much. The bond, the imprisonment, the memories of her mother being dragged away screaming while 7-year-old Elira hid in the cellar and did nothing, clutching little Neve to her chest and praying they wouldn't be found. "My mother had a gift," she whispered. "She could sense things before they happened. The village called her a witch. Lord Sorin called her a threat." Her voice broke. "I watched them burn her." Thalen's hand tightened on her shoulder. "You have it too," he said. It wasn't a question. "That's how—" "You knew about the blade." Elira's insides turned to ice. She pulled away from him, backing toward the bed. "No," she lied. "I just saw him moving. Anyone would have—" "Don't." His voice was sharp. "I can feel your fear through the bond, your guilt, your secret." He followed her retreat, not threatening but inexorable. "What are you?" "I'm no one." Elira's back hit the bedpost. "I'm just a servant girl who made a stupid choice." You are many things, little human. He stopped before her, those gray eyes seeing far too much. But you are not no one, and you are not just anything. His hand rose to her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. Your secret is safe with me, he murmured. The Varketh do not burn the gifted. We revere them. Elira stared up at him, her heart pounding against her ribs. Why? She breathed. Why would you protect me? Something shifted in his expression, something ancient and wild and terrifyingly possessive. Because you are mine, he said simply, and I protect what belongs to me. The words echoed in Elira's mind long after Thalen left that night. You are mine. She should have been offended, should have raged against the possessiveness in his voice, the assumption that she belonged to anyone. But something deep inside her, something that had awakened the moment their blood mingled, purred with satisfaction at his claim. It terrified her. On the fourth morning, the door to her chamber opened, and it wasn't Thalen who entered. A woman swept in, tall and elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes the same pale gray as the Alpha King's. She carried herself with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. So, the woman said, looking Elira up and down with barely concealed disdain. This is the human who has ensnared my son. Elira straightened her spine. I didn't ensnare anyone, I saved his life. By binding yourself to him with the most ancient and unbreakable magic known to our kind. The woman's smile was sharp as a blade. How convenient. Mother. Thalen appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous. He spoke rapidly in the Varketh tongue, his tone sharp with warning. His mother responded in kind, her voice equally heated. Elira watched the exchange, understanding nothing of the words, but everything of the tension. This woman despised her, saw her as a threat, an interloper, a weakness. She wasn't wrong. When Thalen finally led his mother from the room with a firm hand on her elbow, he paused at the threshold. I apologize for her, he said stiffly. She is protective. She hates me. She fears what you represent. His jaw tightened. An Alpha King bound to a human bride is considered compromised. My enemies will see it as weakness. Then maybe she's right to fear. Thalen's eyes met hers, and for a moment the mask slipped. Beneath the Alpha King, she glimpsed a man carrying an unbearable burden. Perhaps, he admitted, but what's done is done. He left, and Elira was alone with her thoughts. That afternoon, everything changed. Elira stood by the window watching the courtyard below where Varketh warriors sparred with brutal efficiency. She had been studying their movements, searching for weaknesses, planning an escape she knew was futile. Then the knowing struck. It came without warning, a vision so violent it drove her to her knees. She saw fire and blood and wolves howling in agony. She saw Thalen on his knees, a blade at his throat, and Lord Sorin's smiling face above him. And she saw herself, standing in the midst of chaos, golden light pouring from her hands. The vision shattered, and Elira gasped for breath on the cold stone floor. Footsteps pounded in the corridor. The door burst open, and Thalen was there, his face pale with alarm. I felt your fear. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands gripping her shoulders. What happened? Are you hurt? He's coming, Elira choked out. Lord Sorin, he's coming here. I saw it. Thalen went very still. When? I don't know. Soon. There was fire and your people were dying and... She gripped his arm, her nails digging into his skin. He had you. He had a blade to your throat. A vision. Thalen's voice was carefully controlled. Your gift showed you this. Elira nodded, still trembling. She expected doubt, suspicion. Instead, Thalen's expression hardened into something fierce and determined. Then we prepare. He rose, pulling her to her feet with effortless strength. My council will need to hear this. They won't believe me. I'm human. I'm an outsider. You are the Alpha Queen. The words fell like stones into still water. By the laws of the Valdris Bond, you hold equal rank to me. Anyone who doubts your word doubts mine. Elira stared at him. Queen? Something almost like amusement flickered in his gray eyes. Did you think the mate mark was merely decorative? He released her shoulders but let his hand trail down her arm to rest over the glowing mark. You are bound to the Alpha King. That makes you Alpha Queen, whether my mother likes it or not. Before Elira could process this revelation, shouts erupted from the courtyard below. They both turned to the window. In the distance, beyond the fortress walls, smoke rose against the pale winter sky. It's starting, Elira breathed. Thalen's eyes blazed gold. Stay here, he commanded. Bar the door. Let no one in until I return. Thalen. He was already gone, his footsteps thundering down the corridor. Elira stood frozen at the window, watching the smoke spread across the horizon. Her vision had shown her what was coming: fire and blood and death. But it had also shown her something else, something she hadn't told Thalen. In the vision, she hadn't been a prisoner or a pawn. She had been standing in the heart of battle, golden light blazing from her hands, fighting alongside the wolves. And Lord Soren had been afraid of her. Elira looked down at the mark on her arm, at the golden light pulsing beneath her skin, and for the first time since waking in chains, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a weapon. Now she just had to figure out how to aim. Elira lasted exactly 12 minutes before she disobeyed. She had tried to stay, had barred the door as Thalen commanded and pressed her back against it, listening to the distant sounds of chaos. Shouts, howls, the clash of steel. Each sound sent a spike of fear through the bond, but she couldn't tell if the fear was hers or his. Then she felt it. Pain, sudden and sharp, lancing through her left side as if she'd been struck by an invisible blade. Elira gasped, her hand flying to her ribs. There was no wound, no blood. But the agony was real. Thalen. Something had hurt Thalen. The bond screamed inside her skull, demanding she go to him, protect him, find him. Every instinct she possessed, both human and something newer, something wilder, clawed at her to move. Elira unbarred the door. The corridor was empty. The guards who had watched her chamber apparently called away to fight. She ran barefoot on cold stone, following the pull of the bond like a compass pointing north. Down spiraling stairs, through shadowed passageways, toward the sounds of battle. She burst through an archway and into hell. The great courtyard of Drakenmoor blazed with unnatural fire. Flames of sickly green licked at the fortress walls, spreading despite the stone, despite the snow. Varketh warriors in wolf form clashed with soldiers bearing the crimson banner of Aldoria, her kingdom's banner, her people. Elira's stomach turned. This wasn't a raid. This was an invasion, carefully planned and brutally executed. How had Lord Soren gathered such forces without anyone knowing? Then she saw Thalen. He fought in the center of the courtyard, a massive silver-gray wolf surrounded by enemies. Even in beast form, she recognized him. The bond sang with certainty. He moved like liquid death, tearing through soldiers with savage grace, but there were too many. For every enemy he felled, 3 more took their place, and the green fire was spreading toward him. Elira started forward, then stopped. What could she do? She had no weapon, no training. The golden light in her vision felt unreachable now, a dream she couldn't grasp. A hand closed around her throat from behind. "There you are." Lord Soren's voice was silk over poison. He spun her around, slamming her back against the archway, his fingers tightening until stars burst across her vision. "Did you think I'd forgotten you, little seer?" His smile was gentle, almost kind, which made it infinitely worse. "You ruined my beautiful plan. The blade was meant to bind the Wolf King to Lady Marin, a woman I've spent years molding into the perfect puppet. Instead, some servant girl throws herself in the way." Elira clawed at his hand, gasping for air. Through the haze of oxygen deprivation, she saw his eyes. They were wrong. The pupils were too large, too dark, swirling with something that looked almost like smoke. "But perhaps this is better," Soren continued, tilting his head as he studied her. "You have the gift. I can smell it on you. The same gift your mother had. Such a waste, burning her. I should have taken her for myself." Rage cut through the fear. Elira stopped clawing and instead pressed her palm flat against his chest. She didn't know what she was doing, didn't understand the power that suddenly surged up from somewhere deep inside her. But golden light exploded from her hand, and Lord Soren flew backward, crashing into the stone wall with enough force to crack it. Elira dropped to her knees, coughing, and her throat on fire. Lord Soren rose from the rubble, and he was laughing. "Oh, magnificent," he breathed, brushing dust from his robes. "Even more powerful than your mother, the things I could do with you." He raised his hand, and the green fire responded. It pulled away from the walls, from the fighting, coalescing into a writhing serpent of flame that hovered above his palm. "Come with me willingly," he said, "and I'll call off the attack. Your Wolf King lives. His people live. All I want is you." "Why?" Elira rasped. "What do you want with me?" "The Valdris bond connects you to the Alpha King's power now. Through you, I can reach him, control him, and through him, I can control the entire Varkith nation." Soren's smile widened. One conquered kingdom wasn't enough. I want both. Dread pooled in Elira's stomach. He didn't just want to kill Thalen, he wanted to enslave him, use the bond as a leash. And she was the weakness that made it possible. "Choose quickly," Soren said, the fire serpent growing larger. "My patience is not infinite." Across the courtyard, Elira saw Thalen finally notice her. Even in wolf form, she could read his expression. Horror, fury, desperation. He lunged toward her, but soldiers closed ranks, cutting him off. Their eyes met across the chaos. "Don't," she felt through the bond, his voice in her mind ragged with fear. "Don't you dare sacrifice yourself for me." But Elira had already made her choice. "Call off the attack," she said to Soren, "and I'll go with you." "No!" Thalen's roar was half-human, torn from a wolf's throat. Lord Soren's smile was triumphant. "Wise girl." He seized her arm, and the world dissolved into green fire and shadow. Elira woke in chains. Again. This time, there was no luxurious bed, no crackling fire, no distant sense of safety. She hung from iron shackles in a cell of damp stone, her arms stretched above her head, her toes barely touching the ground. Everything hurt, but worse than the physical pain was the absence. The bond was muffled, distant, like trying to hear someone shouting through thick walls. She could still feel Thalen, could sense that he was alive, but the connection that had grown so strong over the past days was now barely a whisper. "Ah, you're awake." Lord Sorin entered the cell, carrying a lantern that cast dancing shadows across the walls. Behind him came a woman in dark robes, her face hidden beneath a hood. "The suppression chains are working, I see." Sorin gestured to her shackles. "Iron forged in witchfire. They dampen magical bonds, among other things. Your Wolf King can no longer feel you clearly. He must be going mad with worry." "Good," Elira thought fiercely. "Let him come." But even as she thought it, she knew that was exactly what Sorin wanted. "Your bait," she said, her voice hoarse. "Clever girl. Yes, your bait. The Alpha King will come for his mate. It's not a choice, you see. The Valdris bond compels him to protect you, to find you, to rescue you at any cost." Sorin's eyes glittered with malice. "He'll walk right into my trap, and when he does, my associate here will complete the ritual I've been preparing for years." The hooded woman stepped forward, and Elira caught a glimpse of her face. It was wrong somehow, too smooth, too still, like a mask made of flesh. "What ritual?" Elira demanded. "The same one that created the blade, actually. Ancient blood magic, designed to transfer the bond from one vessel to another." Sorin reached out to touch Elira's face, and she jerked away. "You're the bridge now. Kill you while the bond is active, and all that power flows to whoever holds the knife. Lady Marin will finally get what was meant to be hers." The hooded woman, Lady Marin, pulled back her hood. Elira's stomach turned. The woman's eyes were empty, utterly vacant, as if everything that made her human had been hollowed out long ago. "What did you do to her?" Elira whispered. "I made her perfect," Sorin said fondly. "No will of her own, no pesky emotions or morality, just a vessel waiting to be filled with power." He patted Marin's cheek like one might pat a dog. "She'll make an excellent Alpha Queen, don't you think? So much more cooperative than you." Rage and revulsion warred in Elira's chest. This man had destroyed a woman's mind, planned to enslave a kingdom, and murdered her mother. And now he was going to use her to destroy the man she— The thought stopped her cold. The man she what? Through the muffled bond, she felt a distant pulse of warmth. Thalen, sensing her emotional turmoil even through the suppression. Even now, even from miles away, he was reaching for her. "He's coming," Sorin said, checking a device on his wrist that glowed with the same green fire as his magic. "Faster than I expected. The bond must be stronger than I realized." He turned to leave, then paused. "A word of advice, little seer. When he arrives, don't fight. The more you struggle, the more painful the transfer will be. For both of you." The cell door slammed shut, leaving Elira alone in the darkness. She closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, past the pain, past the fear, searching for the golden light she had summoned in the courtyard. It was there, buried beneath layers of exhaustion and suppression, but present. Waiting. "Come on," she urged it. "I need you. He needs you." The light flickered, then faded. The chains were too strong, the magic too dampened. Elira let her head fall forward, despair washing over her. She had tried to save Thalen and had only made everything worse. Now he was walking into a trap, and she was powerless to stop it. "I'm sorry," she sent through the muffled bond, not knowing if he could hear her. "I'm so sorry." For a long moment there was nothing. Then, faint as a heartbeat, faint as a prayer, "Hold on. I'm coming." Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in the darkness. Elira drifted in and out of consciousness, her arms screaming from supporting her weight, her mind cycling through terror and exhaustion. She tried again and again to reach her power, but the chains held firm. Then she heard the howls. They started distant but grew closer with terrifying speed. Not just one wolf, dozens. The sound raised the hair on her arms and sent primal fear skittering down her spine. But beneath the fear, the bond suddenly blazed to life. He's here. The cell door exploded inward. Thalen stood in the wreckage, fully human, covered in blood that might have been his own or might have been his enemy's. His eyes were solid gold, blazing with a fury that made the air leave Elira's chest. Elira. Her name was a growl, barely human. "It's a trap," she gasped. "Soren, he's waiting for you. He wants to—" "I know." Thalen crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands already working at the chains. "I don't care." "You should care. He's going to kill me and transfer the bond to that woman, and then you'll be his slave forever." "Then I'll die before I let that happen." The first chain snapped. "I'll burn this entire fortress to the ground before I let anyone take you from me." Elira stared at him, at the desperate determination in his golden eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "You didn't want this bond. You said it yourself. I've damned us both." The second chain snapped. Elira collapsed forward, and Thalen caught her, pulling her against his chest with fierce gentleness. "I was wrong," he said roughly, his lips brushing her hair. "The bond may have started as a curse, but you, Elira, you are not a curse. You are the first thing in centuries that has made me feel human." Tears burned in Elira's eyes. How touching. Lord Soren's voice echoed through the cell as he stepped through the ruined doorway, Lady Moraine at his side, a blade in his hand that glowed with sickly green light. "The wolf walks right into the trap," Soren said, just as predicted. Thalen thrust Elira behind him, a snarl building in his chest. "You can't win this," Soren continued. "My forces have surrounded the fortress. Your wolves are outnumbered. And in approximately 30 seconds, my ritual will be complete." He raised the blade. "All I need is her blood." "You'll have to go through me," Thalen growled. "With pleasure." Soren moved faster than any human should be able to move. The green blade slashed toward Thalen's throat, and Elira screamed. But Thalen was faster. He caught Soren's wrist, bones cracking beneath his grip, and twisted. The blade clattered to the ground. Then Thalen's other hand closed around Soren's throat, lifting him off his feet. "You threatened my mate," Thalen said, his voice barely recognizable. "You touched what is mine." "Kill me," Soren choked, "and you'll never break the curse on your bloodline. I'm the only one who knows how." Thalen hesitated. "That's right." Soren's smile was bloody but triumphant. "The Valdris bond isn't just a mating mark, Wolf King. It's a cage. And every generation, it grows stronger. Eventually, it will consume you both." "You're lying." "Am I?" Ask yourself why the bond formed so quickly. Why you can't bear to be separated from her even for an hour. Why every thought, every breath, every heartbeat is consumed by her presence. Soren's eyes glittered. "The bond is feeding on you, on both of you. And when it's finally eaten its fill, you'll be nothing but hollow shells." A chill crawled down Elira's spine. She felt the truth of it through the bond itself. The insatiable hunger she had mistaken for longing, the consuming fire she had thought was passion. It wasn't love. It was possession. Ownership. The bond was devouring them. "There is a way to stop it," Soren gasped. "A ritual to transform the bond from a cage into something sustainable. But it requires sacrifice, the willing death of one mate to free the other." Thalen's grip tightened. "You expect me to believe you'd help us?" "I expect you to realize you have no choice." Soren's smile widened. "Kill me, and you doom yourself and your precious mate to a slow consumption. Let me live. Let me perform the ritual, and one of you survives." "Which one?" Alira asked, stepping forward despite Thalen's warning growl. Soren's eyes found hers. That, little seer, is entirely up to you. The choice was impossible. One of them had to die for the other to live. Those were the terms Soren laid out with sadistic precision as Thalen held him by the throat. The ritual required willing sacrifice, a mate choosing death so their partner could be free of the consuming bond. I'll do it, Thalen said immediately. If one of us must die, it will be me. No. Alira's voice was steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. I'm the reason we're in this mess. I took the blade. I created the bond. If anyone should pay the price. You saved my life. Thalen's golden eyes burned into hers. You owe me nothing. I owe you everything. They stared at each other across the ruined cell, two souls bound by magic and something deeper, something that had nothing to do with ancient rituals or cursed blades. This is very touching, Soren interrupted, still dangling from Thalen's grip. But we're running out of time. The bond is accelerating. Can you feel it? The hunger growing sharper, more demanding. Within hours, it will begin consuming your minds as well as your bodies. Elira could feel it. The desperate need that had been building since the moment she woke with the mark on her arm was now almost painful in its intensity. Every cell in her body screamed for Thalen, demanded his presence, his touch, his everything. It wasn't natural. It wasn't love. It was a parasite wearing love's face. Perform the ritual, Thalen commanded, releasing Soren to crash to the ground. But know this, if you try to betray us, if you attempt any treachery, I will make your death last for days. Soren rubbed his bruised throat, still smiling. Wouldn't dream of it. He began gathering materials from the folds of his robe, candles and chalk, and a small vial of something that shimmered like liquid moonlight. As he worked, drawing symbols on the floor, muttering in a language older than kingdoms, Alira moved to Thalen's side. You can't sacrifice yourself, she whispered. Your people need you. My people will survive without me. They have for centuries. But I won't. The words escaped before she could stop them. Thalen's eyes snapped to her face. These past days, even chained, even confused, even terrified, I felt more alive than I have in my entire life. And it's not the bond talking. It's you, your strength, your honor. The way you look at me like I'm something precious instead of something dangerous. Elira, I spent 15 years hiding, pretending to be less than I am, letting fear dictate every choice. Tears streamed down her face. I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid. If one of us has to die, let it be the woman who was already half dead before she met you. Thalen caught her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. You remarkable woman, he breathed. Do you truly think I could live without you? That I would want to? The ritual is ready, Soren announced, rising from the completed circle of symbols. Step inside, both of you, and decide quickly. I don't have all night. They entered the circle together, hands intertwined. The symbols began to glow, soft silver light rising from the floor and swirling around them like mist. Elira felt the bond respond, pulsing with sudden intensity, as if it sensed what was coming. Now, Soren said, one of you must speak the words of sacrifice. I give my life for my mate's freedom. Simple, final, irreversible. Thalen opened his mouth. Elira spoke first. I give my... Thalen's hand clamped over her mouth, cutting off the words. His eyes blazed gold with fury and terror. Don't you dare, he snarled. Elira bit his palm. He yelped and released her. I give my life for my mate's freedom, she said clearly, the words ringing through the chamber. The reaction was immediate. The silver light flared blinding white, and pain exploded through Thalira's body. Not the breaking bone agony of the suppression chains, but something deeper, more fundamental. Her very soul was being pulled apart. She heard Thalen screaming her name, felt his arms catch her as she collapsed, saw the bond mark on her arm blazing like a captured star. So this is death, she thought distantly. It's not so bad. At least the last thing I'll see is his face. But then, something unexpected happened. The golden light she had struggled to reach, the power that had lain dormant inside her since childhood, suddenly surged upward like a geyser breaking through stone. It met the consuming white light of the ritual and didn't yield. It fought back. Illyra screamed as two forces warred inside her body. The ritual demanded death. Her gift demanded life. And somewhere in the chaos, the Valdris bond itself began to transform. She felt it changing, the parasitic hunger being burned away, the chains of compulsion melting into something else entirely. Not possession, but partnership. Not ownership, but choice. What's happening? Soren stumbled backward, his eyes wide with shock. This isn't possible. The ritual requires death, not death. Illyra gasped, understanding flooding through her even as the pain threatened to tear her apart. Willing sacrifice, the willingness to die for love. She hadn't just spoken the words. She had meant them, had been prepared to die for Thalen without hesitation or regret. And her gift, the power she had hidden for so long, recognized that truth. The white light pulsed once more, then exploded outward. When Illyra's vision cleared, she lay in Thalen's arms on the cold stone floor. The symbols around them had burned black. Lord Soren was crumpled against the far wall, unconscious, and the bond. The bond was still there, but different. Quieter. The desperate hunger had faded, replaced by a warmth that felt like sunlight after a long winter. Illyra. Thalen's voice cracked on her name. Illyra, open your eyes. Please, please. She opened her eyes and saw tears streaming down the Alpha King's face. You beautiful, stubborn, infuriating fool. He choked. Illyra managed a weak smile. Did it work? Thalen pressed his forehead to hers. I don't know. I don't care. You're alive. That's all that matters. The bond? She whispered. It feels different. Yes? He pulled back slightly, and she saw wonder mixing with the tears. It's not consuming anymore. It's just there, like it's waiting. Waiting for what? Thalen's eyes met hers, and the love she saw there made her forget how to breathe. For us to choose it, he said quietly. For real this time. Not because magic compelled us. Not because ritual demanded it. Because we want to. Illyra stared up at him. This man who had been her captor and her protector, her enemy and her salvation. The bond hummed between them, patient now, offering instead of demanding. I choose you, she said, not because of the mark, not because of magic or sacrifice or destiny, because in the handful of days I've known you, you've shown me more kindness than I've received in my entire life. Because you make me want to stop hiding. Thalen's breath caught. And I choose you, he said roughly. Not because you're my fated mate or my destined queen. Because you threw yourself in front of a blade for a stranger. Because you argued with me even in chains. Because your courage puts warriors to shame. He lowered his head, pausing with his lips a breath from hers. May I? He asked. And the question, the choice he was giving her, meant more than any declaration. Yes, Illyra whispered. He kissed her, and the world caught fire. Not the sickly green flames of Soren's magic, but something pure and golden and entirely their own. The bond flared between them, Not with hunger, but with joy. Two souls finally meeting on equal ground. When they finally broke apart, breathless and shaking, Elira saw that the marks on their arms had changed. The golden light was softer now, steady instead of pulsing, and new patterns had emerged within the original design. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "You're beautiful." Thalen helped her to her feet, keeping his arm around her waist. "My queen, my mate, my choice." From outside the cell, wolf howls rose in celebration. Somehow, they knew. The bond connecting Thalen to his pack carried the truth of what had just happened. The Alpha King had found his mate, and for the first time in centuries, it was a bond of love rather than compulsion. 3 months later, Elira stood on the balcony of Drakkenmoor, watching the sun set over the Varketh Mountains. Snow dusted the peaks, turning them to gold and rose in the fading light. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of celebration as the fortress prepared for the winter solstice feast. Arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her against a warm, solid chest. "You're missing your own party," Thalen murmured against her hair. "Our party," she corrected. "And I'm not missing it. I'm just savoring the quiet." He turned her in his arms, studying her face with those gray eyes she had come to love more than she ever thought possible. "Any regrets?" he asked. Elira thought about everything that had changed in 3 months, the trial and execution of Lord Sorin, the tenuous peace negotiations between the Varketh and Aldoria, with Elira serving as bridge between two worlds, the reunion with Neve, her younger sister, who now lived in Drakkenmoor as a lady-in-waiting to the new queen. She thought about the nights in Thalen's arms, learning each other's bodies and souls. The days spent discovering her power, training with the Varketh seers who celebrated her gift instead of fearing it. The moment she had first transformed into her wolf form, a sleek silver creature with golden eyes, and run beside her mate through the snow-covered forest. "Only one," she said. Concern flickered across Thalen's face. "What?" Elira smiled and pulled him down for a kiss. "That I didn't take that blade sooner."